everybody, and welcome to Moose Podcast 208. How you guys doing? I hope you had just as great a week last week as I did. You're out there enjoying fall and all that it brings, and had a lot of fun with your camera and your friends. And I thank you so much for stopping by and listening to the podcast. I also want to thank my good friends at Bedford Camera. Remember, Bedfords.com. Head there. They take care of all your gear needs. They'll sit there and answer your questions. They'll give you a service like you can't believe, answer your questions, and they'll give you answers whether it makes them money or not. And in those times they make a sale, remember that when you check out, ask for that Moose discount. That's MOOSE for those who don't know how to spell moose. You can do it on the website. Save yourself some serious cash. Sales over $99, free shipping, and most states no sales tax. They have lots of great things. The things I've been using this last week that I just got from them, not only is a 24-200 zoom, but breakthrough filters. These guys got it all. Give them a call, Bedfords.com. Well, let's get right to this week's topic, the goal line. Now, there's been a number of podcasts, and I've lost count how many blog posts I have written about goals, short-term goals, long-term goals. And I don't really like to use the word goal so much because they kind of put pressure on us for things that sometimes we don't have control of. But lately, I've had a number of people ask about what's the goal line? As in, with this photography stuff, what is the end point? What is the thing we're striving for? What's that magical brass ring we're trying to grasp, the goal line? I gotta be honest with you, the question kind of stumped me. It pretty much put me, dead in my tracks, because to come up with an answer like that for others, I first feel like, to be, have any kind of credibility, to be able to sit there and help you, is I need to have that answer for myself. So it made me stop and think, what is my goal? What is that goal line? And for a long time, and I'm talking about decades, people have asked, and they say, what are you going to do when you retire? Which, being brought up by the greatest generation, retirement was something they all kind of worked towards. That was, how things progressed in life. You worked for some company, you worked for a long time, you did your best job helping yourself and the company move forward, and at the end, the company takes care of you. But retirement for photographers, myself in particular, the actual stopping, putting your feet up, on the table, and then the golden years, retirement, something that never really ever came onto the radar screen for Sharon and myself. If we're looking at the goal line strictly in that kind of a perspective of the goal line being retirement, where you've put in your time and then you're taken care of through your golden years, yeah, the Photographers Union doesn't have a real good retirement program. Wildlife Photographers International, doesn't even exist. And Aviation Photographers United, not there either. So there's no union dues. There's no employer putting matching funds in a 401k. So that aspect of the goal line, at least for me, is non-existent. But more importantly, I think, it's not the financial goal line. That was the question I was being asked about. Is the personal one. As in, this photographic thing. Is there a point where, as you keep moving forward, that you hit a goal line? You have reached the point where, I guess that you have acquired all the knowledge that you want to. You have all the answers you need. So when you go out and you shoot, boom, it is a done deal. Well, I can only kind of, relate to how I operate and how things work for me to answer this question. And in this last week, got to be honest with you, when it comes to hitting the goal line, for the first couple of days, I was just not even close. So we're up here in Maine shooting, and I'm shooting with so I'm doing basically nothing but landscapes. So I'm using the Z7 a lot, which, just does a tremendous job. And I really enjoy, that. It's got the grip, put in the tripod, take time and shoot. And I mean literally, because I've been doing a lot of 10x shooting. 10x being, that very opaque filter that permits you to slow down the exposure by tenfold stops. And you can really crank down that shutter speed, drag it. And sometimes I put the 10x and a 6x together, really, putting that shutter speed in the basement, producing some really cool things. Check out Deborah Sanders' images. You want to see a master with the long exposure. And I'm still kind of a newbie to it, because you have to think about a lot. Well, besides that process and, the goal line, trying to think, and I'm getting close to it, first 3 days, I had more schmutz on my sensor than you can shake a stick at. And I've got a witness. Sharon was here, and she watched me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm checking these sensors, and I'm cleaning them. And I leave the room with it perfectly clean. I go out in the first picture, and boy, there is just schmutz all over that sensor. It was driving me nuts. Now, what I always advise people who come on a trip with me is, first of all, when you arrive at location, whether you drove or you flew, it's always, you need to sit there and check your sensor, because the vibration of the camera in a roller bag or in your backpack, flying in a plane or driving a car and bouncing around, it's going to put schmutz on your sensor. And I know that. The next thing is that when you take your vehicle, your camera out to the vehicle, that you don't want to roll it across the floor, because that vibration can happen again. I know that. I've told people that. And the first day, brain dead, and I rolled my stuff out there and went across the carpet, across the tile, and down the elevator. Goes out this cobblestone walk out to the sidewalk to get to the vehicle, and it didn't occur to me, and there's schmutz. And it didn't occur to me. Second day, I'm going out, and I just had finished the second day, and I just got across, and I said, oh man, I forgot my own words of wisdom, don't roll this stuff out, because schmutz is going to get on that sensor. It's just going to happen. And so finally, 3.5 days into it, I carried my bag literally in the camera from my room into the van, didn't roll it, and I shot and had no schmutz finally. Well, what's this got to do with the goal line? Well, what is that goal line? What is that we are actually looking for in this process of photography? Is it the perfect photograph? Because if it is, I'm toast, because I don't know what that is. I just, for 3.5 days, I couldn't even take a picture without schmutz on it, and spending time in Photoshop cleaning up all that stuff that was easy to avoid in the first place. And the laundry list of other goof-ups. The goal line, the times was a ways out there. We're out there having fun doing these 10x stuff, and it was a ton of fun, because you have to, you're shooting that 10x. Well, what's the idea of that long exposure? Well, it's to express physical motion in the photograph as a blurred element in the final photograph to show there was motion. The classic example is, of course, water. And in this case, we had some waves, we had swells, but you had to put it in a way that, you would see it in the photograph. You'd recognize it as such. And then, of course, that would help tell the story of whatever the subject was, being at the ocean and time going by. Well, there's a lot to think about. And then you have to, do the whole process. For those who haven't shot a 10x, the process is basically you take your camera out, you arrange all the elements in the frame that you want, which includes the elements you wish to blur with a long exposure. And I'm shooting in aperture priority, so you have the camera in aperture priority, and you take the shot and you adjust the exposure, in my case using exposure compensation, to get the exposure the way you want to express the emotion. And you don't have to worry about the f-stop, but you have to take note of the shutter speed, and you have to remember that shutter speed. And here's the challenge, because then you're going to take that shutter speed and keep it in your mind, screw that 10x filter onto the front of that camera, put the camera in manual mode, the whole time keeping in mind that shutter speed. Then I use the ND Timer app on my iPhone, where you take and you plug in that shutter speed, which you have to remember, and then you put in the filter you're using, in this case the 10x, and then it tells you the time you need to leave the shutter open. Now, half the time in the process of doing this time, I forget the shutter speed time to figure out the time in the app to get the thing done. So that means then I have to unscrew the filter, start all over again, and then that goal line. It doesn't seem any closer when you sit there and realize that you can't even remember the shutter speed to figure out the time in the time-lapse app. But that's this whole thing, right? Is the fact that that goal line, it isn't one that is painted on the ground that you can keep walking towards and you can see it and you know the distance you have to go to reach it. And I think that's the way photography is meant to be. It's not meant to be something that is rigid, is very fluid. And the idea that, you have goals and you reach those goals, and those goals help you reach the goal line, it doesn't happen that way in photography. Yes, you can have goals, and they're important. I have, short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. They help me, have direction of where I want to go in photography, but they aren't the end point. And the journey itself is not even the end point. I don't know what it is still. So for the couple people who asked me this last week, what's the goal line? I don't know. I honestly don't have that answer. And to be honest with you, I probably, and I don't foresee myself having that answer. Probably never. So that itself means that retirement, if we're looking at retirement in the classic old sense, I might never reach it. There might not be a time where all of a sudden I think, yeah, I've done it all. I've reached my goal. And now it's time to celebrate and enjoy the golden life. To be quite honest with you, I've been very fortunate that ever since I picked up the camera and been earning a living from it, I have been living the golden life. I have been very fortunate to enjoy, like tonight again, a sunset with a great group of people. It had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. Went and had a spectacular meal. And at the end, the whole celebration came together because of photography. So perhaps maybe that in itself is a goal line, in the fact that you can keep celebrating life with a camera, and perhaps not the photograph, but just perhaps the genre, and being able to tell stories of good times with friends and places with others. Perhaps that might be it. I don't know. But I think it's a great question that we should all look at in this process of photography and find the answer that works for ourselves, and then celebrate that, because that in a big sense is what photography is all about. Well, please be safe out there, everybody. Keep wearing your mask. Keep taking those pictures. And remember to make every click your story.